welcome to Movement Church Online. I'm Chris, I'm the pastor here at Movement. So glad and honored that you made the decision to join us on this fine Sunday, or whenever you might be catching up with us online. Today we're in part 3 of a series that I have enjoyed so much called Take the Lead. And if you're trying to grow as a leader, trying to grow as your influence, or not even sure what that means, but it sounds interesting, we think today is for you. And today we're going to be looking at the story and the leadership of a man named Joshua, an incredible leader following after the leadership of Moses. We're going to learn some incredible truths about what great leaders do today. So I hope you'll take some notes. I hope you'll share this with someone if you find this to be helpful yourself and you think someone else might find this to be helpful. But today we're going to dive right into part 3 of Take the Lead. Well, we are smack dab in the middle of our series, Take the Lead, and this series exists for one simple reason. Our world desperately needs someone to take the lead, and I believe that God is calling His people, us, the church, to step into any and every area where we have influence and responsibility and take the lead and lead with all diligence in ways that honor God, in ways that help people. So in our families, our marriages, in our church, in our workplaces, in our neighborhoods, our friendships, our city, and our state, anywhere we have influence, it's time for us to take the lead. And a lot of us have this sense that our world, needs great change, and certainly I believe the world needs great change, and great change never comes without great leadership. And so we're spending a few weeks looking at incredible leaders in the history that is the Bible to improve and to grow our leadership and to grow our influence. And today we're looking at one of my favorite leaders throughout the Old Testament, the man that followed after Moses, the man that led the nation of Israel after Moses' death and led the nation of Israel into the promised land, a man named Joshua. Now, to get a little backstory on Joshua, for almost the entire time that Moses led the nation of Israel in the wilderness, Joshua served as Moses' kind of right-hand man and the leader of the military. In fact, in a story that I mentioned last week, like when the Amalekites attacked Israel and there was this strange miracle of, like lifting Moses' hands so that they could win the battle, Joshua was the one leading the army in the battle during that time, right? So after the nation builds the tabernacle, a couple other things about Joshua, after the nation builds the tabernacle for worship in the wilderness, like whenever Moses would go and worship and spend time in the presence of God, what we're told in Scripture is that Joshua goes with him, and he actually stays well after the time that Moses would leave. And he was also one of the 2 spies that gave a courageous, inspiring report of the promised land. There's 12 spies that went in. There was 2 that gave an encouraging report and said, we can go take it. And Joshua was one of those 2 spies that said, we can go and take it. And so after 40 years in the wilderness and 40 years of Moses leading the nation of Israel, God tells Moses that Moses will not be the one to lead the nation into the promised land, and his time of leadership is coming to a close. So Moses, gathers all the people to remind them of the covenant with God, remind them of God's law, says he will not be the one to lead them into the promised land, but Joshua will be. And then we're told that Moses literally walks up a hill and dies. That he just all right, guys, you're good? You're good with God? You know God's law? Okay, it's not going to be me. It's going to be Joshua. I'm taking a walk, and then he dies. We are also told that the nation then spent a month mourning Moses near that mountain, and after that, Joshua is in charge. So here's the context of Joshua's leadership. Joshua is the guy after the guy. again, Moses certainly didn't do everything perfect, but Moses was a very revered leader. Moses was the leader that God used to do what God wanted to do in bringing his people out of Egypt and away from the bondage of slavery and away from the oppression of Egypt. I mean, like, Moses was the guy. Moses was the guy who went up to Mount Sinai and heard from God and came down with God's law. That was, Moses was the guy who set up the system of government and leadership, that sustained them through the wilderness. Like, Moses was the guy. And from a true leadership perspective, or a pure leadership perspective, like, that can be a really hard thing to do well, to be the guy after the guy. This is like being the coach of Alabama after Nick Saban, right? Like, it's constant comparisons to the person who led before you. And like, in my leadership, I have never been the guy after the guy who was really great at his job. I've been the guy after the guy who wasn't really great at his job, which, by the way, is actually pretty easy to be that guy. And I've been the guy who started something brand new as far as a church, but I've never been the guy after the guy who led well. I have tremendous respect from leaders who follow and succeed strong leaders and lead well and lead with all diligence and experience some amazing things in their leadership. So I have tremendous respect for Joshua and what he was able to see happen through his leadership. So I believe we have a lot to learn from Joshua today. So here's the very first thing that we're going to learn from the life and leadership of Joshua today. First thing is that great leaders lead scared. Great leaders lead scared. Great leaders lead when they're scared of stepping in as leaders. In Joshua 1, verse 6 and to verse 9, it says this: be strong and courageous. This is God talking to Joshua. Be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors that I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything that you do. Study this book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night so that you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. God tells Joshua 3 times, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Why would God tell Joshua that 3 times in one setting and in the course of just a few sentences? Like, why is it so, like, be strong, be courageous, be strong, be courageous? Because Joshua was not feeling strong or feeling courageous. In fact, I think the answer is given within what God tells Joshua not to be. He says, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Meaning, right now, you may very well feel afraid. And you may very well feel discouraged. God knows that Joshua is afraid of stepping up to lead. God knows that Joshua had become very comfortable as the second in charge, and that Joshua maybe was lacking the courage to lead the nation of Israel at that moment. And God says, I know this is what you feel, but this is what I'm calling you to be. You feel afraid, I'm calling you to be strong. I know you feel fearful, I'm calling you to be courageous. And I know this is what you feel, but I'm calling you to lead beyond what you're feeling. And for us, like, whenever we're stepping into a new role or a new responsibility or maybe even a new season or a new stretch of life, there's excitement for sure, but there's can also be a lot of fear. Like, if you're newly married, if you're taking it seriously, chances are there's tons of excitement, but hopefully also a sense of great responsibility. If you're a parent, every new season in the life of your kids, like, it brings you new challenges and things that you don't feel ready for. Like, as my kids grow older, as many of us in the church, as our kids grow older, what we find ourselves experiencing is like, whoa, I thought the hard part was when they're in diapers, and man, they turned 9 and 10, they got to middle school, they're getting to and there's all these challenges with technology and friendships, and like, man, like, I don't feel like I'm ready for that. Or if you just got promoted at work and now you're managing others, or your business is growing and expanding, like, you've got excitement, but you've also have some of that fear of the unknown, and like, what if we're not ready for it? Like, there can be excitement and there can be fear all at the same time. And I love that God doesn't tell Joshua to stop feeling what he's feeling, but he says, I need you to act beyond what you feel. Lead beyond what you feel. He says, you have no reason to fear because I will be with you. As long as I'm with you, you can act beyond what you feel, and you have no reason to fear because I'll be with you. And you've seen in the same way that I was with Moses, I'll be with you. And you know what it was like for me to be with Moses. You know that there's nothing that's impossible when I'm with you. You know there's no reason to fear when I'm with you. And I promise you, I'm going to be with you the same way that I was with Moses, as long as you follow me. As long as you walk with me, I'm walking with you. And so I just have a couple of things I want to tell you. If you're feeling fearful stepping into a new season, or maybe there's something that you feel like God's just kind of wanting you to step into in regards to your faith, or like whatever that might be, I just want to tell you a couple of things. You have no reason to fear when you're in God's will. You have no reason to fear when you're in God's will. Like if you got like I've prayed and I've sought the Lord's will and I believe this is it. You can step out in confidence. You can step out with courage, knowing that if it's truly God's will, God will walk with you into it. If you're going like, this idea didn't start with me, this is a God idea. There's not a whole lot of me that really even like that's like eager to this, but if it's what God wants, I'm willing to step into it. This was a God idea, and I'm just telling you, if it's a God idea, God goes with God ideas. You have nothing to fear for sharing your faith. You have nothing to fear for sharing your faith, because that is God's will. God desires for you to share your faith in Him. God desires for you to share Jesus with others. God desires for you to share what God has done in your life with those who have not experienced what you have experienced. God, they're like you have nothing to share to fear in that, because that is the will of God. That's a beautiful thing. You have nothing to fear for standing for what is true and what is right. That is God's will. So whether it's in your home, whether it's in your kids' school, whether it's on social media, like you have nothing to fear for standing for what's true and right, because that is the will of God, and God goes with God's will. God walks with God's will. And you go like, well, what if I do that and people think I'm like a crazy person or whatever? And look, like, find a way to share your faith and stand for what's right without looking like a crazy person. I promise you, it can be done. But also, people can judge and think you're crazy, but if being on God's side is weird, like, I don't really want to be normal. You know what I mean? Like at some point along the way, like we go God's way. We walk in God's will, and God's will is for us to share His love, to share His grace, to share His truth, to stand for what He has said is right. Like there is a calling there, that this is God's will. And when we're walking in God's will, we have no reason to be afraid. We just have no reason to be afraid when we're walking in God's will. The second thing is, you have no reason to fear when you walk God's way. You have no reason to fear when you walk God's way. Again, parenting is hard and scary sometimes. But when you parent God's way, there's a lot less to fear. I mean, because you're not out on your own limb. You're not out on your own ledge. You are on the path that God has for you, and there's a lot less to fear when we parent God's way. Marriage is hard. Marriage is scary sometimes. But when you do marriage God's way, there's a lot less to fear. When you practice, I submit to you and you submit to me, and we submit to one another, ultimately as we submit to God, I'm telling you, like, there's a lot less to fear in that. Big business decisions are hard and they're scary sometimes. There's a lot less to fear when we've decided that we want our business to honor God first and foremost, so that we lead His way and we filter our decisions through what honors God. And I think that sometimes we go like, well, what if I don't know God's way? That is why we open and study His Word, so that we'll know His ways, and why we spend time in prayer, so that we'll know the direction that He is pointing. His way is found in His Word. His will is found in His Word. His will is found when we listen to Him in prayer, and His ways are found when we listen to Him in prayer. So I just want to let you know, if there's a part of you that's like, man, I'm stepping into this new thing, and yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also just scared out of my mind. Great leaders lead scared. They do not wait for courage to strike. They do not wait for the fear to go away. They step up and say, even while I'm scared, I'm going to walk forward, but I'm going to make sure that to the best of my ability, that I'm walking forward in God's will, and I'm walking forward in God's way, because I have nothing to fear, because God will go with me if I'm walking in His will and I'm walking out His ways. You can lead with confidence when you know that God is with you, because you're walking in His will and walking in His way, because He always walks with us when we walk that way. Here's the second thing about Joshua's leadership that I think is so beautiful. Great leaders surrender before they start. They surrender before they start. In Joshua chapter 5, starting in verse 13, it says this: When Joshua was near the town of Jericho, so they're looking at Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a sword in hand. Joshua went up to him and demanded, "Are you friend or foe?" "Neither one," he replied. "I'm the commander of the Lord's army." At this, Joshua fell with his face to the ground in reverence. "I am at your command," Joshua said. "What do you want your servant to do?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did as he was told. Now, if you're not clear what's happening in this story, here's kind of the quick rundown. Joshua is about to lead the people of God to attack the city of Jericho. This is a big city. It's a strong city. It's the first city as they're coming into the promised land. It's the first place that they're going to take, and it's a big one, and it's a strong city. It's fortified, has gigantic walls. And Joshua is looking, on the night before they're about to advance toward Jericho. He's looking and he's scouting, and people are asleep, and people are, eating, or whatever. People are sitting around campfires, and Joshua is just staring at Jericho. And I think there's a sense of like, well, how are we possibly going to defeat Jericho? And he sees this figure, this person. He doesn't know exactly, with a sword in hand. He's like, oh. Are you on our side, or are you on Jericho? Like, are you on my side, or are you an ambassador from Jericho? Like, what's your purpose in being here? Are you on our side, or are you on their side? And this person, this figure, what we come to now know as the commander of the Lord's army, said, I'm on no one's side. I'm not on their side or your side. I'm here to see if you're on God's side. I'm here as the commander of the Lord's army. So I've come to find out whose side you're on. And Joshua's response is to be our response. It's to pledge our allegiance, like I am on the side of our Lord, and to bow our lives before our God. To surrender our lives, to bow our lives, to pledge our allegiance and say, God, I'm not asking you to be on my side. I am surrendered to your side. I have surrendered my life. And you know what I think is fascinating here? God's like, hey, Joshua, you can start scared, but you cannot start unsurrendered. You can start scared. You can start walking scared. You can do that all you want. You can start scared. But you cannot start with a posture that is not surrendered. And so before Joshua takes the step to advance into the promised land, God just simply sends his ambassador, not an ambassador from Jericho, but he sends his ambassador to say, I want you to go check and make sure the posture of Joshua, and make sure that Joshua's heart and Joshua's mind and Joshua's sword and Joshua's leadership, I want you to go make sure that he is surrendered to me. And so here's the thing, for some of us, I want this to be a challenging thought. No matter where it is that you lead, don't go another step without surrendering your steps to God. Don't go another step without surrendering your steps to God. As a parent, again, like, you've read a lot of parenting books, but have you surrendered your parenting to God? Like, you've read a bunch of books, but have you actually surrendered your parenting to God and said, God, if there's a way that you have for me, and it's found in no other book but your word, if there's a way when it comes to my parenting, when it comes to raising my children, and I'm not going to find it in any book, but I'm going to find it in you, God, I surrender my parenting to you. You've watched a lot of TikTok and influencers tell you how to respond to situations. Have you surrendered those situations to God? Like, as an employer, as a manager, you've read all of the business leadership books, but have you surrendered your business to God? Have you surrendered your practice? Have you surrendered your counseling sessions? Have you surrendered the way you act with your patients? Have you surrendered the way you teach your students? Have you surrendered your classroom? Like, at the end of the day, don't go another step without surrendering your steps to God. And here's why this matters. What was coming next for Joshua was Jericho. And if you're not familiar with the story of Jericho, God asked Joshua to implement the most ridiculous battle strategy of all time. God tells Joshua, march around the walls one time a day for 6 days. And then each day you go home. You don't fight. You don't yell. Actually, I want you to walk very quietly. You walk quietly and you go home every day for 6 days. And then And then on the seventh day, I want you to march 7 times as fast so that you can march around 7 times in one day. And then I want you to blow horns and yell. And the walls will come down. And you will win the victory by my plan. I mean, like in this moment, I just think there's a beautiful moment. But that's exactly what Joshua does. Joshua, I mean, like imagine going and telling the leaders of the army and telling the people who are going to walk out this plan, guys, this is the plan. And I imagine there was a guy, because I would probably be the guy. Are we sure that's the plan? Because that sounds like a really bad plan. I don't think that plan's going to work, because that sounds ridiculous. And it does, and it did. And it would sound ridiculous if that was a battle plan for any modern army today. It was ridiculous then, it would be ridiculous now. But here's the beautiful thing. God can use a ridiculous plan in surrendered hands. God can use a ridiculous plan in surrendered hands. God can use a this goes against what everybody teaches today plan in surrendered hands. God can use a biblical plan in a modern world when that biblical plan is in surrendered hands. But God will not use the best laid plans in unsurrendered hands. I believe in this moment there is no victory for Israel without a surrendered leader. I also believe that wherever you lead, there will be no victory for you without a surrendered dad, a surrendered teacher, surrendered coaches, surrendered committee members, surrendered decision makers. That no matter where you're leading, I believe there is no forward progress. There's no victory. There's no experiencing what God wants you to experience. There's no walking. There's no experiencing the victory that God has called you towards without a heart of surrender. And so here's what I know, and this is the reason I say don't take another step without surrendering your steps to God. That at some point along the way, we will find ourselves surrendering. We will either find ourselves surrendering before we start, or we'll find ourselves in a place of surrender because we have found ourselves walking in our own strength, walking in our own ways, and we've reached the end of it, and we cry out to God and say, God, I'm tired of my own way. I come to your way. So why not skip the failure of that? Why not skip the part where we walk in our own strength? Why not skip the part where we try to parent in our own strength? Why not skip the part where we try to do business in our own strength? Why not skip the part where we try to teach in our own strength and say, God, I don't want to walk in my own strength. I simply want to surrender everything I have and everything I do to you. I don't want to end up in a place where I have to surrender because I want to choose surrender at the start. Before I walk another step, I simply choose to surrender to you. And there's one more reason I think this matters so much in our leadership. Our general superintendent of the Assemblies of God, the national leader in the United States of the Assemblies of God, recently I heard him say this incredible thing. He said, you can't multiply by zero. And that's something, as my daughter is learning multiplication in school, she actually literally said the same thing last night. She's like, yeah, if you got zero and you're multiplying, you can't multiply by zero. You cannot multiply by zero. If Joshua wanted to lead an obedient and surrendered nation, he had to model it personally. If Joshua wanted to lead a nation that was surrendered to God and obedient to God, he had to model surrender and obedience to God so that the nation would see surrender and obedience and walk in his footsteps. In your life, if you want to lead an obedient and surrendered family, you got to be an obedient and surrendered husband and wife, an obedient, surrendered mom and dad. If you want to lead a workplace that's obedient and surrendered, it starts with you as the leader. If you want to lead a team that's obedient and surrendered to God, it starts with you taking the lead. If you want to lead a classroom where God's activity is welcome, it starts with a leader that is surrendered to God. You cannot multiply by zero. You cannot multiply. You can't expect to see in someone else what you will not model for them and what you have not lived out in front of them. It starts with surrender and obedience to God, and that's the only way we see that take place in the lives of those we lead, because they will follow and multiply what we show them. Here's the third thing that I think we see in Joshua's leader. Leaders don't let problems fester. So after Jericho, the next city that the Israelites are heading toward is this small little village. So they win this victory over Jericho, and it's phenomenal. It's like, whoa. how did this ragtag group of people that doesn't really have all that much in the way of weapons, and they've been pretty hungry in the desert for 40 years, and like they just kind of came out of nowhere, and they don't really have any skill, and ridiculous battle plan, and they win, and they overtake Jericho. And the next city they're headed to is this small little village, very sparsely populated, called Ai, not artificial intelligence, a literal city called Ai. And it's so small that they've just come off this huge victory over a much larger opponent at Jericho, and everything that they know in the physical assures them that they should win this victory soundly, and they just flat out get humiliated, and a ton of Israelite people die, and it's embarrassing. And Joshua is devastated, and he feels humiliated, so he tears his clothes and he prays to God, like, what is going on, God? Why would you give us Jericho only to fall to tiny little Ai? That's like, like it's like if Mayfield High beat Cruces High, and then they lost to Radium Springs. Like, it's just like how did this happen? Like, what is going on, God? And in Joshua chapter 7 verse 10, but the Lord said to Joshua, get up. Why are you lying on your face like this? Israel has sinned and broken my covenant. They've stolen some of the things that I commanded must be set apart for me. And they have not only stolen them, but have lied about it and hidden the things among their own belongings. I will not remain with you any longer unless you destroy the things among you that were set apart for destruction. It's like, I'll be with you, but I will not be with you in the nation if this stuff is going on. This was the issue before Jericho. God gave clear instructions, and Joshua passed along these clear instructions that the people were not to enrich themselves in any way, but they were to destroy everything in Jericho. And as the story unfolds, we're eventually told that a man named Achan had ignored the command of God and was hiding many valuables that he had taken from Jericho. So God says to Joshua, this is not a time to pray, this is a time to act. Pray always, but right now you've got to find the problem and you need to solve it. Now, in that day and time, Joshua's solution made sense. Achan and his entire family were actually killed for what they had done, for not only stealing the things and taking the things that God had commanded needed to be destroyed, but then conspiring together to hide them and travel together and with them concealed. I don't think that's how we're supposed to solve our problems today. Well, we got a problem. We're a little short on money and end of this month. We need to go find someone to take it. That is not how we're supposed to solve our problems today. And yet, we still often face this is why we can't move forward problems, or this thing could really take us out if we're not careful problem within our own, whether it be in our families or in our workplaces or our businesses or wherever we find ourselves, or in our schools, in our community, whatever it might be. And it's one thing to know that a problem exists, this is what happened to Joshua and sometimes happens to us in family and leadership positions, but it's another thing to know a problem and let it fester, which I have certainly been guilty of at times as a pastor. And so what leaders do, they don't let problems fester. What leaders do is they uncover the issues, and sometimes this can be really difficult, because when you're facing a problem, it's like, we can't seem to move forward, I don't know what it is. Sometimes you got to uncover the issues. You got to do some personal reflection. Look at yourself in the mirror. Look at yourself, at your leadership in the mirror. Look at your parenting in the mirror. Look at your marriage skills in the mirror. Look at your communication skills in the mirror. You do some personal reflection. You can invite and welcome feedback, where people get to speak into your lives, and people who are close to you, people who are more experienced than you, can speak into your lives, and maybe they can see what you can't see, and they can share with you things that you can't see yourself. You seek God. God, is there some way that we're just missing the ball here? Is there some way that you have us to walk, and we kind of assumed we knew how to walk, and we're missing how you want us to walk? And you can also listen undefensively. Like, you can listen to someone giving feedback. You can listen to God. You can even personally reflect without feeling the need to defend yourself and defend what has been. Like, hey, we haven't been able to move forward, but I also know we can't move forward if I'm defensive about the ways that we've been doing things that haven't been working, right? So like, if you don't know the issues, great leaders work to uncover the issues. And the second thing that they do is they address the problems. Once the issues are uncovered, or if they're already known, you address the problems. This can happen through sometimes some difficult conversations. By the way, for a lot of us, this is the reason why things fester. We don't want to have a difficult conversation, but the difficult conversation needs to happen if the problem is going to be addressed. Sometimes it means making really big decisions of, like, we're going to actually invest some things that we haven't invested, that we were kind of holding back, and we got to make some big decisions, and we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to reorganize a whole lot of stuff. We're going to make some big decisions. Sometimes it's shifting priorities. Instead of like, hey, we're gonna worry about this as our customer base, we're actually going to retarget and focus our entire thing over this direction. You shift your entire priorities. Like, it can be a lot of different things, but leaders don't let problems fester. Joshua was a great leader who did not let this problem fester. And that word fester is a word that, like, as you hear, you're like, can you stop saying it? That word bothers me. Yes, that word bothers all of us. When things go undetected and they just grow and grow and grow, nothing good happens. Nothing good, healthy grows in the dark. Nothing healthy grows when it's unseen. Like, I'm just like, he's like, we're not going to let this fester. And because Joshua uncovered the issue and addressed the problem, the nation of Israel was able to move forward. And if you'll do that in your home, in your workplace, in your company, with your clients, like, you get to move forward as well. And personally, as a pastor, like, I have really been trying to work on this. Because as we go into our building and move forward as a church, like, I want us to not just be the same church in a new building, in a building of our own. I want us to be a church that's continually getting better. And I want to be a pastor that's continually getting better. And so I've been doing a lot of self-reflection on my own leadership. And, you know, as I've had a lot of time kind of like spending time in the building, working on doing different things and working on different projects, like praying and going, God, how would you, like, are there ways in me that I'm not being the pastor I should be, that being the leader that I should be, and trying to listen better and listen without getting defensive to some incredibly valuable feedback from people that I care about. It's certainly not always easy, and it can be really uncomfortable at times, but it's worth it because it can make us better, and that's what I want. I want us to be a better church as we get into a new building, not just be the same church. I want us to be able to move forward into everything that God has for us. And so I'm trying to, like, if there's issues, like, I want to uncover the issues, and I want to be a pastor and a leader who addresses the problem, because I want to be a leader like Joshua, who doesn't let problems fester, but uncovers the issues and addresses the problem. Number 4 is that great leaders refuse to settle. Great leaders refuse to settle. So 11 chapters go by, and the nation of Israel has kind of, like, gotten, they've taken the land. And in Joshua chapter 18, verses 1 through 3, we're told this: now that the land was under Israelite control, the entire community of Israel gathered at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle. But there remained 7 tribes who had not yet been allotted their grants of land. Then Joshua asked them, how long are you going to wait before taking possession of the remaining land the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given to you? This is the final thing I think really sets Joshua apart as a leader, and I think it's a really overlooked moment in his leadership. Israel has control of all of the land that they are supposed to have in that moment, and yet 7 entire tribes have not taken their grants of land. Like, imagine you have a piece of land the size of New Mexico with, plenty of room to spread out, but everyone is kind of huddled in Albuquerque and Rio Rancho and Santa Fe and Farmington and Las Cruces. Hard to imagine, right? You're like, that's actually not that hard to imagine. But this is not New Mexico, where there are huge plots of land owned by the government, or incredibly dry areas where no one would want to live. These are fertile areas. This is good land that is theirs, and it's ready for the taking, and God has delivered it into their hands. Like, they had to go fight, but God has given it to them. But they are all cramped together in just a few areas. There's 12 tribes, but 7 of them have not taken their land, have not possessed their land. They're still living in tents when God's called them to go into their land and occupy the land and build, and stop living in tents and build homes and build farms and be able to provide for themselves. He's given them a land that's supposed to provide for them. And they're like, nah, we'll just kind of stay around here. Okay, so that's what's going on. They have won the war, but they seem content to receive far less than what God has given them. So let me ask you a question. Is there any area of your life where that describes you right now? Where God has given you something, or provided something, or sparked a dream, or given you a vision of what could be, or just like a what should be, but you settled for something less, you settled for something comfortable, you settled for something smaller than what God has for you. Maybe you went to work because you believe God wanted you to make a difference, but you kind of settled into a routine of just making a paycheck. I want to let you know there's more. If God called you if God called you back to work, or God called you to that workplace to make a difference, it's because he wants you to make a difference, not just make a paycheck. Now you can make a paycheck and make a difference, but don't miss making a difference while making a paycheck. Maybe you got married with dreams of the family that you would build, but now you've kind of just settled into just kind of being roommates with an uneasy tension. I'm telling you, like, there is more. There is more. There is more. Maybe you got involved with the community program so that you could shine the light of Jesus in the lives of young kids, but a parent complained about you sharing your faith, so you backed off and you're like, well, I guess I'll just coach the team. I guess I'll just coach the team. I'm telling you, if God called you there so that you could shine the light of Jesus, you figure out a way to shine the light of Jesus, because there's more. What he's called you to is what he has for you. So step up. And so this is the posture of Joshua, and this is what I think a leader's posture should be, whether leading in the home or in a workplace, in a community, on a team, in a committee, in a decision-making body, whatever it might be. You push for everything that God has for us while being content with everything that he has for us. You push for everything God has for us while being content with everything that he has for us, and not seeking anything beyond what he has for us. You push for everything God has, like God, until we're walking the way that you want us to walk. I'm not content until we've experienced the dream that you placed in our heart. We're not content until we see the dream become the reality. We're not content, and so we're not like, we're making money, and we're making a living, and the thing is succeeding, but it's not impacting the world the way that you want it to impact the world. And we're like, no one's getting a divorce, but we're not like, where we should be. So like we're not content. We're not content. We're not content. We're pushing for everything that God has for us. Like your kids aren't screaming at you, but the relationship, we push for everything God has for us. You're a teacher and you're in a classroom, and it's like, okay, the kids are learning everything that they should learn, but you believe you were sent there to make a difference, and to be a relational impact, and to shine the light of Jesus. And you're like, I've actually kind of been holding back. I'm just telling you, there's more. So you push for everything God has for you, and at the same time, you don't push for anything that God doesn't have for you. You're content with what he has for you. You don't push beyond God. I mean, if you notice, Joshua didn't say, go fight battles on the outskirts. Go expand our territory. He's like, no, go take what's ours. Go take what's ours. You push for everything that God's given and called us toward. And then we stay content with what God's given us and what he's called us toward. This is the leader's posture. Leaders refuse to settle until what God has placed in their hearts becomes a reality. And so as a mom, as a dad, as a husband, as a wife, as a grandparent, as a business owner, as a teacher, as a coach, as a therapist, whatever it is that you feel God has called you to, would you refuse to settle? Would you refuse to get comfortable? Would you refuse to, we've made it this far and that's pretty good? We'll be content here. When God's called you to more, when God's called you further, great leaders refuse to settle. What I think as I think about our church, and as we move into the new building, not only saying like I want us to be a better church in a new building. I don't want us to be just like, I don't want us to think like, wow, we got a building. I want that building to be a tool that helps us reach more and more people, and more families, and more children, that get to know and love and find out about the love of God through the local church. Like, I want it to be a tool. The building is not the goal. We've said this over and over and over again. And you say these types of things when you're a mobile church. A church is not a building, and it's true. But if we approach this right, the building is an incredible tool in the hands of a church. And so the building isn't the goal, but the goal is that we would use the building to see God do ever more in the life of our church, through the ministry of our church, to reach more people through our church, so that more and more people can come to know Jesus and see their lives changed, and their forevers changed, and their families changed, and their destiny changed, and their eternity changed. Because a church wasn't content to have a building, but wanted to use the building to see the dreams of God become the reality in our city. And so let's make the decision that wherever we are, we're going to lead like Joshua. We're going to refuse to settle. We're going to surrender before we start. We're going to not let problems fester. But we're also going to make sure that we start even if we're scared. We're going to lead beyond our feeling, because that is what God has called us to do, and that's who God's called us to be. So today, as we pray, would you pray with me that God would spark something in you that refuses to settle, that surrenders before you start, that addresses the problem so that they don't fester, and that you would start wherever you are and be willing to start scared, so that you can take the lead in whatever way God wants you to take the lead. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for who you are. Thank you for your love, your grace, your mercy. Thank you for everything that you are to us and everything that you have for us. God, I simply pray that we would be men and women who hear from you, and we'd be men and women who lead for you. God, that whatever area you've called us to take the lead, wherever area you've given us influence, whatever area you've given us a dream, whatever way you've placed a vision in our hearts of what can and should be in the future, in our world, in our families, in whatever areas you might have for us, God, I simply pray that you would help us to be the men and women you've called us to be. Help us to lead like Joshua. Help us to lead beyond our feelings, that when our feelings are fearful, when our feelings lack the courage, God, help us to lead anyway and step up as the leaders you've called us to be. God, help us to surrender before we start, because we can lead scared, but we cannot lead for you unsurrendered. God, I pray that you'd help us to not let problems fester, but to solve and address the issues and uncover the issues and address the problems and solve the problems. And God, I pray that you would help us to be leaders who don't settle, who don't become content until we've experienced the reality of what you've called us to, what you've promised us, what you've called us toward, what you've placed in our hearts, until we see that become a reality. Help us to refuse to settle. Help us to refuse to settle until we've experienced and seen everything that you have for us. So God, give us wisdom to know what to do with what we've just heard. Give us the courage to do it. And God, as we do that, would you help us to take the lead and experience and see everything that you have for us to see and experience. We love you, God. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
You are the one, creation obeys when you speak. Dark turns to light, death comes to life. Jesus, when you breathe. You are the one, calming the wind and the waves. You'll make a way, your promise remains. God, you never change. You always will be God alone, seated on the throne, King of all majesty. You reign in victory. You always will be God alone, seated on the throne. Jesus, be glorified, forever lifted high. You are the one, the lion who rode from the grave, the stone rolled away, you overcame. You're worthy of all praise. You always will be God alone, seated on the throne, King of all majesty. You reign in victory. glory is yours, now and forevermore. All the glory is yours. Oh, all the glory is yours. All the glory is yours, now and forevermore. All the glory is yours. All the glory is yours. All the glory is yours, now and forevermore. All the glory is yours. You were, you are, you always will be God alone, seated on the throne, King of all majesty. You reign in victory. You were, you are, you always will be God alone, seated on the throne. Jesus be glorified, forever lifted high. All the glory is yours. All the glory is yours, now and forevermore. All the glory is yours. All the glory is yours. All the glory is yours, now and forevermore. All the glory is yours.
The more I see, the more I find to love. The more I know, the more I can't withhold in my heart. I'm still amazed by who you are. Somehow it never gets old, telling you you're holy. Somehow it never gets old, telling you you're lovely. Somehow it never gets old, telling you you're worthy. For as long as I live, I'll never get tired of giving you praise. Hey, with every day, another reason why. With every breath, another chance to give my heart. I'm still amazed by who you are. Oh, somehow it never gets old, telling you you're holy. Somehow it never gets old, telling you you're lovely. Somehow it never gets old, telling you you're worthy. For as long as I live, I'll never get tired of giving you praise. Somehow it never gets old, telling you you're holy. Oh, somehow it never gets gets old telling you you're lovely. Somehow it never gets old telling you you're worthy. For as long as I live, I'll never get tired of giving you praise. How could there be more when you've already been so good? How could there be more when you've already been so kind? What else can I say? I'm still amazed by you. How could there be more when you've already been so good, Lord? How could there be more when you've already been so kind? What else can I say? I'm still amazed by you. What else can I say? I'm still amazed by you. Oh, somehow it never gets old telling you you're holy, Lord. Somehow it never gets old telling you you're lovely. Somehow it never gets old telling you you're worthy. For as long as I live, I'll never get tired of giving you praise. What else can I say? I'm still amazed by you. What else can I say? I'm still amazed by you.
Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us today for Movement Church Online. Hopefully you found it to be helpful, encouraging, challenging, and it leaves you a better follower of Jesus because of your time with us today. And today, as we close out, we just have a few ways we want to encourage you to engage with our church beyond this weekend experience. First of all, if you want to know the ways that you can give, we want to encourage you to know the ways that you can give and encourage you to take some time to be a generous giver. And so you can give online, you can give with our Cash App, or you can give by sending a cash or check offering to our P.O. Box. But however and whenever you give, thank you so much for being a generous giver. Thank you for your investment in our church that helps us to keep creating environments that help people take a first step and a next step in a relationship with Jesus Christ. We couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do it without your generosity. So thank you so much for being a generous giver. And then we also want to let you know if you have a need, we'd love to hear from you so we know how we can be the church for you in your time of need. So please reach out by phone, by Facebook, or email. They're all on there on screen right now. The ways that you can get in touch with us, ways you can let us know what your need might be, so we can know how we can pray for you, how we can pastor you, how we can partner with you to meet your needs. So please reach out. We would love to hear from you so we know how we can be the church for you in your time of need. And that's all we've got for you today. I'll look forward to seeing you next week, either in person or online. And until then, I hope you have a great week, and I hope you'll keep being the movement.